Hi, everybody. I hope you're well. Today is segment 4, Descriptive Words. I'm going to encourage you to take the first 3 segments and do them each individually, and that is how you're going to find your roadmap and your musical score. First, you did your prose and your verse. Then we did the verbal conceits, consonants, vowels. Then we did spelling, capitalized words. Now we're going to do descriptive words. Each time you do it, it's a learning process as compared to a memorizing process. I believe descriptive words are extremely important to building your character. And playwrights like William Shakespeare uses them distinctly for that purpose. Because we're a Western society, dialogue goes from left to right. We read from left to right. When you watch an action on stage, directors direct it from left to right. This example is an actor saying dialogue, and then when a descriptive word happens, the playwright literally stops it and they open up the line. And they're saying to you, put a color in there. Make the descriptive word a color so that it produces some quality, some characteristic that is unique to the person you're playing. When you're finished, it goes back to the line and the dialogue continues. The descriptive word is unique to your character, I said. No other character would make the same choice. That is why you must discover it or fresh mint it as if it never happened until that moment. You are the color and the description. All this will be available to you in this handout. I want to read you a scholar's definition of adjective. There's adjectives, adverbs, similes, and metaphors. Typically serving as a modifier of a noun to denote a quality of the thing named, to indicate its quantity or extent, or to specify a thing as distinct from something else. Make specific choices. Adverb, typically serving as a modifier of a verb, an adjective, another adverb, a proposition, a phrase, a clause, or a sentence, and expressing some relation or manner or quality, place, time, degree, number, cause, opposition, affirmation, or denial. Those are what the scholars say. I simplified it and said, make it a color. To start out coloring your descriptive words, I would like to use the first example of Petruchio. Petruchio says, you lie in faith, for you are called plain Kate and bonny Kate, and sometimes Kate the cursed, but Kate, the prettiest Kate in Christendom. Let's start with just those 4. What I would ask you to do is to see these words and start out with a simple exercise and say to yourself, is the descriptive word good or bad? Plain Kate, and in class, we say to the ladies, does anyone want to be called plain? And most of them say absolutely not. Bonnie, beautiful. Yes, we get a lot of yeses on that. Kate the cursed, bad. Kate, the prettiest Kate in Christendom, good. Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate, really good. We get the actor who's doing this to just go bad, good at first, and it changes their vocal variety. Then we say, look the words up to make them specific. So again, they modify, just like the dictionary said, and it becomes characteristic of the person you're playing, the choices that you make. Petruchio would go, you lie in faith, for you are called plain Kate, bad, and bonny Kate, good, and sometimes Kate the cursed, bad. But Kate, the prettiest Kate in Christendom, Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate. Again, it changes and it describes and it gives you color and variety and makes your character unique. At the end of a performance, I believe the audience adds up all of your descriptions and actions, everything all the other characters say about you, your body language, your humanity or lack of. Then they look at your costume and then they decide what they make of you. It's been a process, and I encourage you to look at everything we do as a process, step by step by step, leading to the full tapestry, to your full work of art. The more words in the description, the more the character is wrestling with themselves to get it right, to accomplish their action, and to get what they want. An example would be King Lear is talking to Albany, and his daughter, Goneril, has just thrown him out of her castle. So he says to the husband, "Create her child of spleen, that it may live and be a thwart, disnatured torment to her." Not just a torment to her, but a thwart, disnatured torment. That's much worse. The more descriptions and the more words means the character is wrestling with themselves to get it just right. Now, I'd like to use a simple example from a play that I love because I directed it twice, The Dining Room by the late A.R. Gurney Jr. The character in the Sally Arthur scene says, "I mean, you already have a perfectly good dining room." If the character one night said, "I mean, you already have a dining room," the audience wouldn't know. If the character said, "I mean, you already have a good dining room," "I mean, you already have a perfect dining room," they would not know words were missing. But this character in this moment chose to say, "I mean, you already have," open, "a perfectly good," back, dining room. So Arthur is coloring. He needs to tell Sally those descriptions so that she's convinced, so the action and his need are accomplished. Next, we will deal with similes and metaphors. I'm not going to read from the dictionary because for me it was too complicated. I need you to know my simple definition, and I believe in simplicity. Similes and metaphors color in the gray area. An example of this is two people go out. The third night, they fall in love. The fourth night, one says to the other one, "I love you." It's magic. It's a wonderful evening. Fifth, sixth, seventh night, "I love you, I love you, I love you." All of a sudden, "I love you" gets a little boring. And then someone comes up with, "I love you like the raging sea in a storm." That's a little more colorful. That's a little better. It colors in the gray area. It fills in that gap. That's why the playwright opens it for you to fill it. Now, I'm going to go back to this handout where I've given you an example of a simile and a metaphor. The simile will come from Viola in Twelfth Night or What You Will. She is now Cesario. She is in disguise, and she is speaking to Orsino, who secretly she's mad in love with. And she's telling him about a young girl who never told her love that she loved him, just like herself. And she says, "A blank, my lord, she never told her love, but let concealment, like a worm in the bud, feed on her damask cheek. She pined in thought, and with a green and yellow melancholy, she sat like Patience on a monument, smiling at grief." When she says, "like a worm in the bud," that's the simile. And the deeper meaning is Shakespeare's talking about a caterpillar that's going to turn into a butterfly, and she wants to turn into the wife of Orsino. That would be her butterfly. Feed on her damask cheek. Damask is a Shakespeare word. It usually means blush, reddish. She pined in thought, and with a green and yellow melancholy. Shakespeare uses these words. I encourage you to look up all of the colors, the Roy Jabiv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, because they have different meanings. Green can mean young, it can also mean sick, it can also mean jealousy. Beware the green-eyed monster, Iago says to Othello. Yellow is a funny color. It's an in-between color, and it usually means friendship, but it also can mean sick. If you give someone yellow roses, it's different than giving them red roses. She sat like Patience on a monument. This sculpture already existed. Shakespeare knew what it looked like, and so he is telling the actor to get in a position where she's leaning and she's looking at him, and she says, smiling at grief. And Orsino is her grief because he doesn't know yet that she loves him. A simile will always begin with like or as, and it has a deeper meaning. It'll say one thing, but underneath is what the real meaning is. Metaphor, which is also on this sheet, my favorite metaphor is Juliet. Juliet says, when she's talking to the knight in the famous Gallop Apace speech, come night, come Romeo, come thou day and night, for thou wilt lie upon the wings of night, whiter than new snow upon a raven's back. What does it mean? I only know, I live in New York City, that if I went outside to a New York City cop and went up and said, whiter than new snow upon a raven's back, he would probably cuff me and take me away and think I'm on something. Metaphors, I usually say, are crazy talk. They sound really, really bizarre. She's making this deeper meaning between the snow and the raven. The snow, of course, is white. The raven, of course, is dark. It has multiple meanings. Snow is fresh, refreshing. The raven is a very smart bird, but it can also represent death. There's many things that are going in there, and you as the actor need to explore all of these and come up with your final decision. Next, I would like to go to pompous words or words that you don't say every day, such as alas, alack, fadge, parmacity, popinjay. There's a descriptive meaning for your character why you choose these pompous words. When Petruchio was talking to Catherine, he had a line, alas, good Kate, I will not burthen thee, for knowing thee to be but young and light. Alas is one of those words that Shakespeare gives multiple meanings. It can be comic, but it can also be dramatic, but it always involves an emotion. When Petruchio says, alas, good Kate, he's called her 17 Kates, now he's calling her good Kate, but he's starting it with this poetic, pompous alas. So he's going up the chain of being. He's telling her, you're making me feel so deeply that I have to speak poetry to you. He's pouring the olive oil all over the line, and he's hoping that it's going to work. So his alas is emotional and comic. Miranda, in The Tempest, when she sees her, hopefully to be boyfriend Ferdinand, picking up a log that Prospero has made 1,000 pounds with his magic, she comes out and she goes, alas, now work not so hard. So her alas is an emotional explosion for him to stop, but it's also comedy. A dramatic meaning will be when Cordelia takes the alas, but she's going to use alack, another word that we don't say. We don't say alack. Alack, alack, 'tis wonder that thy life and wits at once had not concluded all. She sees her father, who she hasn't seen for a very long time, who banished her, threw her out, and she thinks he's dying, and this is just too much for her. Shakespeare gives her these words, or gave the actor, the artist, these words so they could express an emotion without losing poetry. It's a pompous word. It's a word that you need to take and make it meaningful. It will always depend on the given circumstances, and you must use your technique and common sense when you say these words as to the why that you say them. My famous pompous word is fadge. Viola says to the audience, how will this fadge? They said Shakespeare made up 3,000 words. Fadge means how will this turn out? But it just didn't stick. Nobody uses fadge anymore, although I think it's a really great word. When you use these pompous words, one of the actions might also be is that you are trying to impress the person that you're talking to, and that is why you use this really big word. Another reason why you use these pompous words is that you will be trying to get the other character that you're having a dialogue with mind off of what was just said. And so you give them a complicated word which makes them think in the moment and forget the previous moment. There are examples of this everywhere, and I'm going to encourage you now to start to look for these examples. Moving on, malaprops. Shakespeare was famous for malaprops. A malaprop is a mistaken use of a word in a place of a similar sounding one. The example I like to use is Dogberry, and he says, "Dost thou not suspect my place? Dost thou not suspect my years? Oh, that he were here to write me down an ass." You've seen dust, which in the height of language we talked was emphatic. Thou, we said, is informal and friendly. Suspect, though, should be respect. Do you not respect my place? Do you not respect how old I am? But he says suspect. Other playwrights have taken this and gone as far as they could with it. And the next set of writers were the Restoration writers. And Richard Sheridan wrote a play called The Rivals, and he literally wrote a character named Mrs. Malaprop, and she's absolutely wonderful. People love malaprops in the audience because it involves them. And remember, Shakespeare always includes, involves, incorporates. It involves them to listen to see if there will be another one coming, and they want to make sure that they're playing along and they catch it. I would like to also, because sneak in a little TV, and I'm going to send you this handout also, and I'm going to use this one several times. This is Joey from Friends. Monica says, "Joey, what would you do if you were omnipotent?" Joey looks at Monica and says, "I'd probably kill myself." She goes, "Excuse me?" And he says, "Hey, if little Joey's dead, then I got no reason to live." Ross then, very smart, goes, Joey, ... omnipotent." And Joey cuts him off and he goes, "You are?" "Ross, I'm sorry." So Joey, he's innocent and he takes it to mean something that it's not. Next, I want to talk to you when you have two different kinds of words, monosyllabic and polysyllabic. The monosyllabic words, 99% of the time, are Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon words are used by playwrights when the action gets dirty, down, and gritty. They get right to the point. And my clue is that a fifth grader can understand these words. If a fifth grader can understand it, 90% of the time it's monosyllabic. If it's two syllables, polysyllabic, more Latin-oriented, it's more elevated, it's more intellectual. The actor is, again, using their intellect to solve the problem. And here's an example from King Lear again. The first thing is here, nature, here. Dear goddess, here. Goddess is the only polysyllabic word in that sentence. Here, 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 they're four letters and they're monosyllabic. The next line, he says, into her womb convey sterility, dry up in her organs of increase, and from her derogate body never spring a babe to honor her. Convey, sterility, increase, derogate, these are polysyllabic. He was wrestling with himself, just to get the insult and the curse right because she's hurt him so badly. He needed those words. He started with the Anglo-Saxon and he developed it into the polysyllabic Latins. When you again look at the lines, it will be easy for you to decide. Petruchio, when he says, "Good morrow, Kate, for that's your name I hear." Simple thing. If I say this to a fifth grader, would they understand it? If it's yes, then it's simple. When it gets into words like sterility and derogate, then it becomes more complex and they probably wouldn't understand it. So your action is to emotionally rise to the occasion and have a need that uses those words to complete that thought in action. Last step. The last step is you must make a list of everything every character says about you. This is part of your script analysis, your given circumstances. It's also a way to understand your character. And the best example of this for me is in Othello. All the characters say, honest Iago. I counted them up. There's 34 honest Iagos. It's repeated so much because it's character. And Iago should learn to not play this as a villain. He should play it as if he's the nicest guy in the world and he's honest Iago. That will make him more evil. So you must understand your descriptions, and that, as I said in the beginning, at the end of the night, the audience adds up all these choices that you've made, and that's how they form your character. That will be the end of descriptive words. Each one of these segments so far is a little tool that you apply. When we get to the segments with Shakespeare to Stanislavski and rhetorical speech, those are the bigger picture. These are the smaller learning steps. Please do your whole script using one of these segments from beginning to end, and then see what you've learned. That will conclude today's descriptive words, and I would like to end with a quote. In Measure for Measure, Lucio says, "Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." Don't be afraid to try. It's a learning experience, not a failure. Have a great day. See you in segment 5.